This is the farmhouse where I grew up, where my father grew up, where my grandfather grew up, where my great-grandfather grew up. The main house was built in 1860. We got electricity in 1943 with the Rural Electrification Act. And now what I am doing is I'm removing the majority of the 1960 updates and reverting the era back to somewhere between 1920 and 1950. I'm going to show you each room in the order that I did them years ago. While I am no more of a carpenter or a designer than any member of my family has ever been, I'm doing it to suit me and my tastes. What you see here is the flooring that we chose for the living room and also the bedroom. You'll see the bedroom in book 10. It's the same floor as you see that it's setting on in the mudroom. However, the mudroom floor is the original floor click lock that was very hard to put together, so they modified it to make it go together easier, and that's what we ended up buying. So while it looks the same, they are not interchangeable. So the first piece of the luxury vinyl plank floor that we laid down was the piece that was going to go against the bathroom floor. We did not want to transition. We wanted the two to be absolutely level. However, there was a problem. The floor in the bathroom is 4.3 millimeter thick. The living room vinyl plank floor is 5 millimeter. So here is how we got the two to merge together. And you can't just click lock the two pieces together because they have two different styles of locking, as you can see in this image here. So step one in the process was to take a very sharp utility knife and cut the locking tab away from the existing bathroom floor. Next step was to take a mini plane and go over the living room floor and remove the lock from that piece. As you can see, all the little shavings, we went down through and carefully peeled off all the lock tab so we had just a flat surface. Then when we put the two pieces together, you can see that they line up because both locking tabs are now removed. And then at Home Depot we purchased a bottle of Henry vinyl floor adhesive and laid a bead down the mating surface of the living room vinyl plank floor. And then we slid the two pieces together, and with those white sliding door guides installed in the subfloor to guide the sliding door, that piece is held in place until the glue sets up. And that is how we got our transition to be almost perfectly flat, taking 4.3 millimeter to 5 millimeter vinyl plank floor. Then the next step was just to extend the planks down to the wall, and then going in the other direction all the way to the kitchen. From this point, half the floor would be put in correctly as the manufacturer intended. The other half of the room, you would be putting it in backwards. And here you can see we've got half of this section done backwards. And of course, living in the house while we are doing this work, there is tons of stuff in the way that have to be moved. And by moving some things around, we made our way to the wall, and the section that we had to put on backwards was now complete. The transition into the kitchen was accomplished with a thin piece of oak hobby board. In this next image you can see where that oak hobby board had 7 coats of amber shellac, and you can see we've extended the floor almost to the outer wall. On this side we were putting it in the way the factory wanted as opposed to backwards on the other side of the room, so it went considerably faster. Then we started putting in the 8-inch baseboard, and we chose the section that was the hardest first, which was where the kerosene heater sits, where the kerosene line comes through the wall. There was a lot of cutting and test fitting to get this section so that it would go together correctly. And once we were happy with the fitment of that piece of baseboard, then it was primed and painted in the house mud and installed. And then to cover up that slot where the baseboard slid over the kerosene line, we carefully cut and glued in a little filler piece, and that had to get sanded, primed, and painted so that it would disappear. And then, because we had extended the thickness of the wall with the insulation and the baseboard, all of a sudden our kerosene line was too short to reach the heater. As you can see here, the offset from the exhaust to the intake of the kerosene is 8.5 inches. And as you can see, we needed 10 inches. So a new short piece of copper had to be cut and bent and flared to get the 10 inches offset that we needed. And of course, all that putzing with the kerosene line, we got air in the system and it would not bleed, so we had to go to Harbor Freight and buy a vacuum brake bleeder to suck the air out of the kerosene line so we could get flow. And once we got flow, then it was a simple matter to slide the Laser 73 heater into place, plug it in, and hook up the kerosene line and verify there was no leaks, so we'd be ready for winter. And this image shows why back in chapter 6 we had to raise that receptacle just above the baseboard. And then when we got around to the corner where the sliding door is that goes upstairs, there was an interference with the 8-inch baseboard, so we ended up just masking and painting a section of the wall to mimic the baseboard. And most of the time you don't ever see this section of fake baseboard because the sliding door is open, covering the fake baseboard. And that is how we installed the luxury vinyl plank flooring in our living room.